Are you ready to become an unbeatable leader for the first time in 2025? Well, I'm opening up just 3 VIP coaching spots. This is a private 6-month coaching experience where I personally train elite business owners and leaders to operate at the highest level possible, build the daily discipline of a SEAL with uncommon habits, and gain the respect of a world-class leader by mastering the 5 mountains and the 5 plateaus, and achieve ultimate fulfillment by designing a life that you truly love. This program is not for everyone. It's only for those who refuse to settle for anything less than excellence. So if you're ready to dominate your year, head to markdevine.com/coaching to learn more and fill in your application today. I'll review all your applications and set up a call to see if this program is the right fit. Charles, great to have you here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And you too, Catherine.
Thank you.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi.
All the way out from Florida, Boca Raton.
Boca Raton, mouth of the rat.
It's the mouth of the rat. Who would name a city the mouth of the rat?
I have no idea. And it's interesting because right below where I am, there's a road called Yamato, and that's named after an entire Japanese individual who had these pineapple farms. But it was during the war, people got upset and they would try to rename it. It's wild stuff down there. It's the Wild Wild West down in South Florida.
Well, Florida and California could be like, 2 peas in a pod.
They really can. The thing is, most people don't pronounce Florida properly because it's Florida is the way you actually have to do it on the end. But anyway, we'll get into that later.
Dude, what was the biggest mind shift that you had to make? Like the biggest mindset shift, biggest change in how you viewed yourself?
I think the biggest mind shifts that I had came from an experience. So I spent 8 years at a hospice watching people die. And prior to that, I had this massive ego. I was, I thought I was a decent looking kid. I had a baseball.
How would you classify your ego now?
Less
massive? Slightly massive.
You've been around me long enough, a little bit less. But being around death and understanding that, it resets things on a high level. Knowing that one of the first times.
Were you volunteering there? Or was
no, I ran the IT division for it. We had 350 users and I ran IT for them. So we rolled out an EMR for those playing at home. And EMR is electronic medical records system. And this is, Windows NT, Windows 2000 days, because I'm old. And we went in, I had to sit in the rooms with the patients. Wow. And what happens, what most people don't get, is when you walk into a room, we call it priming, you know this. Yeah. You walk in and you prime yourself. So if you're going to jump off a high board, if you're going to do something you've never done before, you go, and you do that. If someone's going to take a basketball shot, they'll breathe air in.
Everyone's got a different ritual.
Right.
And have a positive ritual makes a big difference.
And if you have it proven on lots of different things, which you've done. So people go, before they go into the rooms, they'll prime. And they don't understand the patient is also priming.
Interesting.
But I'm in the room and no one ever interacts with me because I'm the computer guy.
Right.
So I got to have raw interactions with people who were dying. I got to have conversations with them where they didn't have to prime because they all put a mask on, as we all do. We have put on different versions of ourselves, which we will get into.
So you mean they are different with their doctors than they are with their family members. Absolutely. And they are with visitors?
Well, think about it. You've got kids. Yeah. So if you're going to have naughty naked time with the missus, that's a very different version of you when you're going to sit there and play with your kids. And if you mix it up, then the cops show up. But we all show up differently in that dynamic. So the patients, when they're struggle busting, they really are. I mean, they're going through it. They're in an immense amount of pain. All of a sudden, their daughter or their son, they'll sit there and like, oh, I'm going to be the strong father. I'm going to be the strong mother. They're going to be that. If Aunt Susie's coming, they'll put on a face. And then as soon as they leave, you'll see, but we've got them connected to machines. So I could hear it. But I'm just the IT guy waiting for updates to happen on the software. And they're sitting there and they're bored out of their minds when they're in and out of consciousness based on pain, depending on what they're going through. For the audience who doesn't know, a hospital is a place you go to get better. A hospice is a place to go to die. It's when you're going to expire.
Actually, I kind of have an issue with that hospital place you go to get better.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
About half the people don't get better.
Yeah, it's 1/3 of the people. Yeah, it's horrible. But that really kind of reset it for me because every day for 6 months I drove home and I just cried.
So are you saying before that you didn't value life as much or you weren't positive? Who were you before and who were after?
I think I was in such survival mode because, I didn't win the parent lottery. We talked about this off camera. Yeah,
you told me you bought your dad a business for $500,000 and he embezzled all the money.
Yeah, he broke it.
Bankrupt.
He broke it. Yeah. And
wow. Stand-up guy.
But I won the grandparent lottery, so that was good. I won the aunt and uncle lottery, so they were gifts. But before that, I was in a school environment, which I was only one of 2 kids in a minority. There was an immense amount of violence. At home, there wasn't any violence. There was emotional stuff that we all go through. But school is really, really a tough environment. So I learned how to survive through what I would call warrior, it just being in front of everybody's face and pushing back and getting intense about it. Right. And when I tried to carry that into the rest of my life, once I got out of where I grew up, it was ineffective. So being able to connect with people in a different manner. I also was surrounded by 350 women versus a single father. And my father taught me one way to treat that side of the species. And then being around all of these surrogate aunts and moms, it changed. I realized that women were the source of love and compassion and empathy versus what I was trained by my father to think. So it changed my ballgame pretty intensely.
You say it opened your heart at a feeling level, or is this a cognitive level? Only?
Both.
Both.
Both. It changed me fundamentally as who I was because, growing up, I thought I could brute force it either by if I was attractive enough, if I was smart enough, if I could outspeak or outthink other people. And then all of a sudden that changed because I don't care who you are and what you've gone through. One of the first guys we ever saw in hospice, he was a UDT guy. So, and he had inoperable bone cancer. So if you don't know what bone cancer is, it turns the tubes, that is your bones, because they're tubes, it breaks them from the inside and it jabs into you. So he's in constant pain. And he was crawling across the floor, covering his own goodness, because he was in so much pain, begging for more morphine. And we couldn't give him more morphine. And he was in that much pain. And I was like, if this guy who could go through what he's gone through is suffering like this, I'm an individual who doesn't even like it when you mess up my steak. I'm so much of a snowflake compared to those guys. I was like, I can't do that. It really hit okay, I'm not God's gift. And then understanding the finality of it. Right. And then being around all organized faiths in that environment as well. I got to talk to rabbis and pastors and priests, and we'd have these conversations. Yeah. And it really helped me do things while I was going through college.
What a powerful experience.
Yeah.
So if you were to summarize the biggest limiting beliefs that you had, that you demolished from that experience, and what you replaced them with, what would they be?
Ooh.
So limiting beliefs.
Limiting beliefs. So there's quite a few. I don't think there's one, but there was one lady that I caught up with, and if we have time for this story, basically we're sitting at the nurse's station and I'm watching people prime normally to go in. But in this case, people were leaving upset. I mean, they were going in upset and they were leaving joyful. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. That breaks all patterns. And I'm a pattern guy. It's how I go through the world. So I asked one of the nurses what was going on. They're like, I don't know. It's been going on for 3 days. So I walked over to the room and I knocked on the door. And I said, hi, my name is Charles Schwartz. And she was, yeah, but you go by Charlie, right? And instantaneously, what's called persona shifting, she changed how I operate as a human being. Because in business, I'm Charles. And the rest of my life, I'm Charlie. And I walked over, I said, do you mind if I ask you some questions? She's like, absolutely. I go, what do you do? And she responded, she goes, I'm a mom. I'm a daughter. I'm a grandmother. I'm a friend. I'm an aunt. She goes, but what I do is I'm a teacher. And I was like, okay. And then we talked for a couple minutes and I was like, everyone's coming in depressed and they're leaving joyful. They're like, they're not leaving joyful. I was like, okay, walk me through this. She goes, I went through my whole life with the equation that I could outgive the love that I get. And that was the way I lived. And she goes, and I was completely wrong and I didn't realize it till here when I was dying. I said, so walk me through it. She goes, it's a force multiplier. The more you give, the more you get. And she said, the world should be run by love and absolutely nothing more. And it cracked my core. Yeah. And she goes, I need a favor. And I was like, absolutely, whatever you want. Because in hospice, you're required, as long as it's not illegal or immoral, you say yes. And I was like, whatever you want. She goes, can you speak at my funeral? And I was like, I just met you. She's like, that's the favor I want. And I cried. She died 2 days later. And that main lesson of running things differently, where I used to do it through ego and brute force and testosterone, switching it over to love and being in service to others has opened up every opportunity I had. And then from there, the other big thing that shifted me was that the version of me that broke it couldn't fix it. I used to play baseball. The guy who stood on the mound was not the guy that could implement it, get his homework done. Right. And learning how to go in and out of those versions, which I call personas, going in and out of those is what's made me successful. Because it wasn't the tactics, it wasn't the skills, it was learning how to go in and out of those different versions.
Don't you want to leave behind a limiting version of yourself instead of going back and forth between it? Something else?
So no. So there are times where I get stuck. And we all have a version of us that's not enough. We're not tall enough, not short enough, not blonde enough, not brunette enough, strong enough, whatever it is. There's that not enough version of us. It's called the lowest persona. And then there's a version of us that's an unstoppable force. We have that. If I only drive from the warrior side of me versus the lowest persona, I don't know what's going on. So when I get stuck in business and personal life, I will feed and invoke the lowest persona version of me, and because it's my warning light. I just don't ask that version of me to fix it, but it can see things that the other ones can't. Because the warrior side of me believes in ituum aut faciam, which is I either find a way or make a way. I'm going to go through the wall. It doesn't matter what's going to happen. I'm going to go through that damn wall. That's ineffective. And I covet efficiency above all else. How do I get from A to B with the least amount of effort?
Do you think that lower version of yourself is like a trauma-informed child who's parted himself out?
There's a lot of it. There's a lot of, we're designed to avoid pain. That's how life works, right? So there's 4 personas that I've gone through, which is there's the lowest, there's the default, there's the warrior, then there's the ideal. The first 3 were designed to avoid pain. So when you were first born, you didn't have to do anything. You could literally poop all over your plate, all over yourself. See how nice I cleaned that up? You could literally poop all over yourself, and someone's going to wipe your butt and they're going to feed you. But then you have to brush your teeth. And then sooner or later, as you get older, then you have to make your bed, or you have to get good grades. So everything is this if-then type of environment. And we're taught this formula of, if I do this, I'll be enough. And if I'm enough, I'll be worthy of love. And that's completely broken. And I walk people through that, how to break that really easily. There's a simple way. If you want me to do it, I can walk you through it. But I still need to hear the what's going on, what's broken, why aren't things executing? Like there's a meeting I'm going to. Why am I nervous about it? There's a talk that I'm speaking at. Why am I freaking out? What's going on? I need to sit down and listen to that versus, no, I'm just going to show up and push through it. I'm going to show up on stage and I'll make it happen. Right? No, I sit down, I feed that version of me, and I'm like, what's going on? And Norm's like, you're not prepared. Go research this again. All right, cool. Do you know how to research it? And that version of me is like, nope. I'm like, cool. I have to go switch to somebody else now. It started with a book by Eckhart Tolle called The Power of Now. And it sat there and says, I can no longer live with myself. And I dropped the book and I was like, what the hell is that? Because I was like, I can't have 2 people in me. That doesn't make any sense. And the more I played with it, I was like, oh, because there's one version of me that does a certain way of my life. There's another version of me that dresses differently and does another way of my life. Going in and out of those and persona shifting changed my life. And it's what allowed me to retire.
It sounds like to me that you're using ego as synonymous with fear. Like when you say I drove with ego before and then I shifted. What I hear, because there's, as you know, I'm sure, is like there's a healthy version of our ego. So the ego is still there, present in how you're driving now, but the one that you're talking about that you shifted out of.
I think he's just categorizing the ego into these 4 different personas.
Yeah.
It's all the ego. Because I look, ego equals personality. That's my definition of ego. It's your personality. It's your self-identity.
Yeah.
Also, Freud would call it the lower self or the.
Yeah, I was just curious because it was like that when you learned how to drive with love, it's like, oh, it sounded to me like before you're driving survival, it was all fear.
Survival is the word I would use because most of the time what I'm doing is when I was in that environment, it's like, if I do this, I'm worried about the past or I'm worried about the future. And that kept me out of the present because it's a survival mechanism. It's like, okay, I did this thing before. It was wrong. I need to constantly play that again. So I learned not to do it again. Then, oh my God, this thing might happen. A green banana might fall on my head or whatever it is. I need to worry about it. And that's taking me away from being present because it was all fear. And fear came from insecurity and letting go. I just had to okay, I have to let go of this because it wasn't real. Yeah. And that was a hard thing to push through, is pushing through that because there was just so much trauma growing up. Just an immense amount of it. And we all have it. From some of us got more, yay, and some of us got less, but we all have it in different ways. And some people learn to weaponize their trauma. You've done a lot of stuff with Budge, the guys that go through those communities, and most of them didn't grow up in happy-go-lucky environments. They had some stuff that they had to work through. So they can weaponize it that way. Some people weaponize it into substance abuse. For me, I had originally weaponized my fear and my doubt and my pain into a 92-mile-an-hour fastball. That's what I did. That's why I harnessed it there. But the version of me that used to sit on a mound and vibrate, because I would literally vibrate listening to Rage Against the Machine before I went on the mound, which is good stuff.
It's one way to prep.
Yeah, it's one way to prep. It worked. The minute I took that version to hang out with my girlfriend, I was like, ooh, that's not going to work. That I can't have that version show up. That version couldn't take a test. So I was originally pivoting those very, very young. I just didn't know what I was doing. Yeah, I didn't understand it. I wasn't aware enough at the time. But yes, a lot of it is ego.
So, generally speaking, we talk about ego as lower self, and then the higher self as being more of your spiritual energy. But ultimately, it's all mind. So you can partition the mind into as many parts as you want. And another one, way to partition is the archetypal energy. So you're kind of doing a little bit of both. Now, the lower energies tend to have a downward pull to them. Okay. Meaning the more you wallow there, the more you get that. Right?
Yes.
Because it's a reflective universe. Like if you're full of rage and shame and guilt and you're acting out the victim, you're going to get more of that and it's going to become self-reinforcing. And so you're going to have more shame, more guilt, more rage. So it kind of pulls you down and traps you in those lower energies. And so it's very hard to break free of that. You need a crisis or an incredibly positive mentor or some transformational experience that can pop you out of those negative energies
Mhm.
to give you a landscape
Right.
view of something different.
Yeah.
So what was it this 6 years you spent as a,
Yeah,
working in that environment with the hospice that was your
no, I wish I did.
pull or push out of that? Or
I didn't have
what
that
was it?
pivotal event. Regrettably, I didn't have super really bad or super really good happen. You could tell I was educated.
Yeah, because I had one of those, right? It was my experience with Nakamura,
Okay.
right? It was a mentor who taught me to sit down and meditate and just showed me all this incredible positive energy.
Mhm.
That was such incredible contrast to the
Right.
negative forces of my.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons I'm here is because I've had guides along the way. So very much like you had mentors. Your book that, I've got, one of the reasons that you had the Unbeatable Mind. And all of a sudden I was like, that was a thing because again, I didn't win the parent lottery. There were these guides. And I've always had people be either books or individuals that kind of helped along the way. But what allowed me to break free from it more than anything else was sitting down and writing out everything.
Yeah.
And having to kind of do it because I'm not a coach. I'm the best I am as a.
So you used your intellect to fight your way through that. Because journaling and metacognition, reflecting upon what's working, what's not working, that's an intellectual.
Yeah, it was very intellectual. I used a tactical mirror on it, basically. I sat down and I took that version of myself and I said, okay, what color pen do you want? And I figured out where it was breathing in my body. And I was like, all right, I'm going to invoke this version of me. I'm going to sit in this depressed, not enough, whatever it was. And I wrote down everything that it was saying.
Interesting.
And I was like, awesome, here it is. This is how I breathe. This is how I walk. This is where I do. This is this version of me. What do you want? And it would tell me all the things that were wrong. And I would sit there and every time it said the same thing again, I'd mark it again. And then I'd mark it again. I'm like, cool, how do I fix it? And then finally when it ran out of energy and it goes, I don't know how to fix it. I just know how to tell you the problem. I'm like, awesome. Are you okay if I go to a different version of me? And then it let go. And I was like, okay. And then I pivot over to another version.
You just intuitively came up with that, or did you learn that from somebody?
I'm sure I picked it up from somewhere, but I've just always done it. I didn't invent any of this. I'm not source for any of this.
You talk about that in your book.
I do.
Who
changes everything.
Who changes everything?
So I went through that process, and then I would take from that the lowest, the I'm not enough. And he was, okay, this is the problem. You're not prepared for this podcast or whatever it is. I'm like, okay. And then I would go to the warrior version of me in this case, and this is hypothetical. I'll be like, well, then screw it. I'm not going to show up. I'm going to browbeat Mark into the ground and I'm just going to win. I'm like, okay, well, that's not the result we want. Okay. That might not work well.
Good luck.
Yeah. So good luck with that. Exactly. And because my warrior versus your warrior, I'm going to lose. I didn't earn one of those. I'm going to lose. So then I would go into other versions and then I would sit there and then the lowest would pop his head up again. I'm like, cool. What do you got? And he'd say the same things over and over. I'm like, great. Do you know how to fix it? And it would let go. Because the secret of who changes everything isn't the personas. It's the idea of what I call the witness, which is to sit there and be completely indifferent towards what's going on and say, okay, what are we doing? If there's emotion to it, there's going to be problems. Just letting go and say, this one wants to do this one wants to do this one to do this, one to do this. What is my ultimate truth? What am I serving? What gets us there the most efficiently? And once all of them have been heard, the pain stops. The fear stops. And for me, I did it because I wanted my brain to think again. Because there's just all this noise going on all at once. And the only way to calm it down was to give them space and to stop resisting. Once it said its truth, it would pull back and let me go and do whatever I wanted to do.
That's genius. Yeah, it rings true for me because I like trauma, recovery. The whole point is to find the parts that have been trapped or, trauma pattern was created for survival.
Yes.
As a kid, usually at a very young age, 3 years old, 5 years old. And to, through the therapeutic process to bring that into awareness.
Yes.
And then just sit with it. And I think asking questions of it is brilliant. Because then you kind of you learn the different flavors. Why did this happen? What are you trying to tell me? And awareness tends to, almost be 90% of the solution.
It really is.
Awareness is the healing.
Mm-hmm. And then I think what hospice also taught me was that no matter how amazing I am, there's always going to be someone better. There's always going to be someone worse. And that's okay. But and the way I pivoted out in a pivotal moment with my grandfather, he taught me how the formula to retire, which was X minus Y equals Z. X is how much you make. Y is what it would cost to pay someone else to do it. Z is what's left over. Will that work? And at the time, I owned an IT company, so I was doing about $270, $280 a year. And I knew that if paid someone else about 120 to 140, 90% of my workload would be gone. I was like, could I live on what's left over? And I was like, yeah. And my grandfather goes, why haven't you done it? I'm like, because I just learned it. I apologize. And so I just immediately implemented it. And then once you get addicted to that freedom, because that's what I wanted more than anything else, and all the people I've coached and helped scale, they come to me and they're like, hey, I'm making $1 million. I want to make 10. I'm making 10. I want to make 20. I'm like, okay, that's adorable. What do you really want? And they'll sit there and like, what do you mean? I'm like, okay, here's this one thing you're going to do. You're going to work 90 to 100 hours a week, because that's entrepreneur, that's a light week, every week for the next 5 years. And you might make $500,000 a year. Over here, you're going to sell cat dildos. Who cares? Whatever it is. You're going to work 4 hours.
You're really hung up on these cat dildos
Yeah,
today.
well, it's an energy snap. It gets people's attention. So I use it all the time.
Also could possibly make a lot of money.
So it's actually been patented.
Has
which
it?
is
Yeah.
wild.
I was
I
like,
said this
that's
during an
definitely
event,
someone's
and
done that.
Someone pulled out their phone and they're like, what the hell is cat dildos?
Yeah.
And it's actually, here's the messed up part. It's made for male cats, not female cats.
Huh.
Weird.
All
Anyway,
right.
enjoy that part.
Moving on.
So back to it here. So over here, you're working 80, 90 hours a week and you're making $500,000. Over here, you're making $250,000 a year. I mean, $500,000 a year, $250,000 a year. You only work 4 hours a month. Which one do you want? Almost everyone ever I worked with goes over to cat dildos instantaneously.
Well, I do that because you could do like 4 or 5 of those.
Because you got freedom back. You get your life back. So what happens is people get married to this. It's like, I have my grandmother's cupcakes, or I'm a SEAL, or I've done this, or this is what I'm known for. And it's irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant. What do you really want? What are you serving? Because the problem with once you have this awareness and you get access to your truth, once you have access to that, you'll have higher highs and lower lows. Because anytime you violate your truth, it collapses.
As a busy leader, you know that performance, mental and physical, can't be left to chance. So you got to take care of your nutritional needs, along with all the other stuff that I usually teach. And one way to do that is to get proper supplementation. Now, I've been using Momentous for over a year, and here's why. They're not just another supplement brand. Their Momentous 3, protein, creatine, and omega-3 form the foundation of my daily supplement routine. These nutrients are critical for long-term health and performance, yet most don't get enough of them from your diet alone. In the morning, I use the grass-fed whey protein isolate for muscle recovery and immune support. I use the creatine sourced from CreaPure, the purest form available, for both cognitive and physical energy, and the omega-3s for inflammation and brain health. Taken together, these 3 fuel every cellular function in my brain and body, helping me stay sharp, focused, and resilient so that I can keep performing and leading at my best. What's unique about Momentous is their uncompromising standard. Every one of their products is NSF certified for sport, which means rigorous third-party testing for purity, potency, and the absence of contaminants or banned substances. This is non-negotiable for them. There's no fillers, no artificial flavors, no shortcuts, simply the highest quality, most bioavailable ingredients in every batch. So if you're ready to switch to a supplement that puts your performance first, go over to livemomentous.com, livemomentous.com. Use the code DIVINE, D-I-V-I-N-E, for 35% off your first subscription. Again, use the code DIVINE at livemomentous.com for 35% off. It's time to elevate your standard by choosing Momentous. All right, guys, let's talk about sweating and stinking. You know the drill. Hit the gym, crush your workout, and then you spend the rest of the day wondering if your friends are dodging you because you stink. Or maybe you want some deodorant, but you're standing in the aisles staring at a sea of boring scents that scream average. That doesn't have to be anymore. Let me introduce you to Cremo. Cremo is a deodorant that's a game changer. 48-hour odor protection. It doesn't just work, it works with style. They're barber-grade pros who put pride and passion into their products. Trust me, you'll feel the difference. No residue, no nonsense, just smooth application and scents that'll make it stand out. Their 2 signature blends are Italian Bergamot, which is bright, robust, got notes of bergamot, neroli blossom, and fresh vetiver. It's like stepping into a Mediterranean breeze. And then there's Palo Santo, which is smoky, deep, and refined, with hints of cardamom and dry papyrus. It's confidence in a stick. I tried Palo Santo deodorant last week, and I'm hooked. Not only does it last all day, but it makes me feel like I've leveled up my grooming game. And my wife likes it too, so that's a bonus. So why settle for boring when you can elevate your deodorant experience? Head on over to Target or Target.com today to grab Cremo's new line of antiperspirants and deodorants, such as the Italian Bergamot or Palo Santo scents. Again, Target or Target.com. That's where you'll find Cremo. Good, uncommon scents. I want to just kind of like big pile on that because I've been thinking this, but you helped me really kind of cemented home because I had been thinking, well, I've got to build a big business. I've always been like seal fed. I got to scale it and have an exit.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's an enormous amount of work and a lot of mostly my time.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, well, I actually don't really need that. I just need, to generate $1 million a year in cash flow, pump that into real estate and pump that into other businesses that are cash flowing because cash is king.
Yes.
Right.
Well, cash flow is king.
That's what I meant. Cash flow is king.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to think of wealth in terms of a number, but then they lock it up in the stock market and they never touch it.
Mm-hmm.
My parents are a great example. Yeah. They got, let's $5 million in the stock market, but they won't touch it. They won't even fly first class because they've got no cash flow.
So your parents are Jewish like me.
I'm not going to say anything else about my parents on this podcast.
I know they're going to listen one day. Someday they're going to listen to it and be like, oh my gosh, and they're going to read your books and they're going to realize you've been.
My parents they are awesome, actually. They're incredible people.
Can I chime in on what I wanted to double down on that I think is a universal truth? And you said you're not the source of anything. So I just was like, you said when you violate your truth, everything collapses.
So anytime, like let's say you're dating someone.
Yeah.
And you decide you're dating Bob. And you realize that Bob's not your guy.
Yeah.
And it hits you. Now, most
of
us,
Andrea, by the way.
Whoever it is. And then, so all of a sudden, the next time Bob goes to kiss you, it's going to be like kissing a garbage can. The next time you guys try to cuddle, it gets worse. When my clients realize that they don't want to work 80 plus, 90 plus hours a week for the rest of their lives, anytime they go in their office, they're like, I can't do this anymore.
Right.
So once you identify your truth, anytime you violate it, it's extremely painful. It's extremely painful. And because people stay in relationships, it's the, I think Ebenezer Scrooge, the Christmas Carol, the ghost of Christmas past came, no change. The ghost of Christmas present came, no change. The ghost of Christmas future came, instantaneous change. Because they realize like, it's not going to get better. I'm not going to do this anymore. I've violated my truth. I'm going to change. But most of them don't do that because we're trying to run away from the fear wolf. We're trying to go through that process. We're like, okay, well, there's this thing hunting me. I've got to keep getting away from it, versus sitting down with it and say, what are you trying to do? And most of the time, the version of me that doesn't think it's enough or is depressed or anything like that is trying to say, listen, you probably shouldn't be doing this anymore because it violates whatever your truth is.
Well, it also, I heard it on another layer too, is like if everything's connected in the universe, that you're also, things are going to fall apart around you in some way because you're not living in your dharma, or in your purpose. You're not in flow. So you're like, going to keep hitting things up against your head up against things. And so, but I'm glad I asked because that feeling, that pain point, it does get harder and harder once you hear the truth inside. And then to keep, I've experienced this firsthand.
It's your shoreline. It gets you home once you have it. But I will say your purpose and your truth will change. It will evolve. So people are like, oh, my purpose is that I'm an underwater basket weaver. Okay. You might decide 3 weeks from now, you're a bagel maker. Okay. So you can have that as your body's trying to figure it out. What happens to most people is they lock in on one thing. Like I'm good at baseball. I'm a baseball player. That's what I'm going to be forever. No, you're not. Just move, evolve. Because there's 3 lies we believe. And the 3 lies are the lies of what? The lie of how, and I'll save the last one. So the first one is the lie of what? Do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Complete lie. Absolute lie. Because if I told you every single day, you have to go in 40 hours a week, every week, doing what you love nonstop for the next 60 years. You won't love it very long. Exactly. The next lie is I don't know how to do it, which is complete crap. Everyone in this room right now has an iPhone or an Android device and they have access to Google.
And we got AI.
And now we have AI. We talked about it yesterday. So you know how to do it. The final one that really gets me in trouble, and I won't mention his name, but he was on stage and I was walking off, but it's the lie of why. It's the biggest lie I've ever heard in my entire life. I was walking off stage after I spoke and there's an individual, I will not mention this individual's name, said that why is the most important.
It all starts with why.
Yes. And I
think there's a book.
There is. It may or may not have been done by the showman. So I was walking off stage and I was still hot mic'd. And he said it and I said, am I allowed to curse on this show? Of course. So I was walking off stage. He goes, the why is the most important. I was like, bullshit. And he was like, excuse me? I was like, oh.
That's awesome.
And I was like, oh.
He brought you back up on stage?
And so he's like, no, come on. You just crushed it for 3 hours talking. I was like, no, I apologize. That was deeply disrespectful of me. This is
Didn't know I was still mic'd up.
I wasn't knowing I was mic'd up. He was like, come on, let's talk about it. And I was like, listen, I think it's great for you. And if it's truth for other people, mazel tov. But it's complete crap. And he's like, all right, prove me wrong. I'm like, okay. I said, everybody, do you know why you want to make $1 million? Like, yes. I go, do you want to know why you want to get in better shape? Like, yes. Why you want to have better sex? Yes. Why you want a better relationship? Cool. How many of you have actually done it? And all the hands went down. I said, why does it matter? It's not going to do it. The only way it works is if you pivot the version of you into a different. Like there's a version of you, we were talking about this earlier, that is a beast. You were honor grad, I think it's called, honor grad when you were a SEAL. There's a version of you that has had your business experience the last 4 or 5 years. If you allow the version of you that was honor grad to run things, you get a very different business result. If you let the version of you that's run your businesses for the last 4 or 5 years, you get a very different result. They all have the same whys.
Good point.
They all have the same hows. They all have the same whats. But if you don't pivot which version of you is driving your car.
I'm an honor man in my business.
We'll get to that.
Fucking win. Right?
So there you go. So if we find a way to honor man you in your business and to decentralize command and put in leadership, it'll scale fast. But if I take the version of you that's been running for the last 4 or 5 years, you get a different result. So being able to pivot that, even though they both have the same why, they have that I want to make $1 million because I want to work.
Starts with who? The why will follow.
Correct.
I actually agree with that.
Ooh,
I think Simon's a smart guy, though. He's got a lot of other good stuff.
He does.
He made a lot of money with that one.
He does.
So I got a question. Imagine that as a host of a podcast.
Imagine you have questions.
You've helped a lot of entrepreneurs like pivot and transform, their understanding of who they are and why they do what they do. What were some of the biggest shifts in personal truths that you've seen happen? Right? Because everyone thinks, they got to figure it out until they don't, right? And hit a wall. But usually there's these themes, right? Yeah. And so you see these themes across these different entrepreneurs. So what were some of the biggest truth bombs that shifted
the most jarring, entertaining ones? One guy who was in his late 60s, he came out and he had grandchildren and all that. And he just identified that he was gay. And I was like, awesome. He was like, that doesn't bother you? And I was like, are you offering? He's like, are you accepting? I'm like, no, it's kind of an exit only for me. He's like, cool. I mean, you don't care that I'm gay?
Did he and
he'd been married.
Tell anybody else this?
I was the first person he ever told publicly. So I was like, all right. And I was very flattered. Yeah. But he switched the version of his life that was, I need to be this because again, at his age,
can't hide from it anymore.
He's like, this is who I am. I was like, great. He goes, and it doesn't
better
bother
late
you.
than never.
Hey, but we were happy. And then we sat down and we met with his wife and they talked about it and they're still very married and they live their lives and he gets to do what he wants to do and she gets to do what she wants to do and it works out for them.
Wow.
There are people who in their relationships, they wanted to have open relationships versus not open relationships. I was flown out to Lake Como and there was a husband who was being promiscuous and didn't want to sleep with his wife anymore. And then the wife was in the same situation where she didn't want to sleep with the husband anymore and she was being promiscuous. And they flew me out. They're like, what do we do? How do we do this? I was like, well, do you want to remain married? They're like, yes. I go, do you care that she's doing this? He's no. I said, do you care that he's doing this? No. I said, then what's the problem? And they're like, oh. So those are the ooh la la flashy ones. The business flashy ones are, I had a doctor that I worked with who's a cardiologist. He was like, I want to become a politician. But in order to do that, I need to do this, this, and this. So I said, okay. So I wrote down a letter and I said, here's this. We're going to you put it in your drawer. We're going to get it later. We're going to acquire 6 practices. So that's what we did. It's the fastest way to scale if you're in that situation. So we acquired 6 practices. And then about 8-9 months came in, the other doctors tried to buy him out. And he lost his mind because his identity was, I'm a cardiologist. I'm one of the best in South Florida. This is who I am, blah, 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 blah. I said, go get the envelope. He said, what? He goes, I'm pissed at you. I need to talk. I'm like, just get the damn envelope. Went and got the envelope. He opened it up and it told him, in 12 months, I was a little late, they're going to offer you this much money and they're going to try and exit. And then you have to decide what you want to do with your life. And it had been sealed in his desk for 8-9 months at that point. He goes, well, you're off on the money. It's a little bit more. I'm like, sorry, I did my job better, you dick. And then I was like, now do you want to be a politician? He's like, no, I want to get a boat. I want to travel with my kids. And then COVID happened. So he had that and he went and he traveled with his kids. So what mostly happens with business is they realize I don't care about my business. I got my father's window company or I got my this or that. And they just don't care. They want the freedom.
They're burned out.
Right. If you're the creative people, because there's 2 sides. There's the 95% of the people are like, I just want the freedom. How do I automate? How do I create residual income? I don't want to be the product. I don't matter.
That's where I'm at.
Right. Absolutely. Versus the 5% like, no, I'm special and this is mine and this is who I am. I can't help the 5% because I don't have that.
Right.
I hunt freedom. My biggest thing is I just want to be left alone on the highest level. Just let me do what I want to do. Leave me alone. Give me the freedom. I want to work with the people I want to work with. Leave me alone. I like my privacy. So once they realize this and they get to this side, things change really, really quickly. But they have to understand that they don't matter. And that's a hard part.
Yeah.
Anytime I've scaled any business, it's the CEO that's always in the way.
Yeah.
I'm like, just get out of my way and I can scale you. But you're the problem.
But I have a question about that because, what if what we've seen is then, okay, the CEO gets out of the way and then the leadership that comes in does a worse job.
Right. So that's a bad hiring. That's a bad system. That's a bad culture and a bad hiring. If you're coming in, because everyone wants to run the systems first. And it never works.
Right.
So if I come in and say, here's the SOPs, here's how you execute on a high level from acquisition to fulfillment, here's how you do it. If your culture isn't there, you lose. And the fastest way to identify culture is separate everybody, have a neutral person come in and say, what's the goal of the company? What is the one truth we serve on the highest level? If they do not answer all the same thing, they lose. Like, for example, in combat, if I go to a team, if I go to team 3, and I say, what is the goal of this mission? They will tell you, our goal is to go in and get kitties and have ice cream. Whatever. They are clear on what that mission is and what the objective is. Yeah, SEAL teams go, and ice cream. They'll go in and they'll do that. They're very clear before they ever leave. If I go into most organizations, I'm like, what is your goal? And the accountant will be like, oh, well, my goal is to make sure we reduce taxes or our P&L changes. If I go to marketing, like, oh, our goal is to get this. And then you go through it, I'm like, wrong. If you're not serving one goal, your culture is broken. From there, after you get into culture, you then have to do something called decentralized command, which SEALs do it all the time. You guys are phenomenal at it. You have to also empower up and down the chain. Yeah. So I have to make it so that if I have a team, I will tell them to do something. I'm like, hey, go roll out this new funnel, go roll out this, this, and this. My team's empowered to tell me no. And I have to have my ego in check to say, okay, why? What do we got? What's going on? I respect it. Don't do it. Why? Well, they're closer to the problem. They know what's going on. They're like, that's not a good idea. This is what's going on. I see this. I'm like, perfect. I have to empower them. But if they don't know what my goal is and what our truth is that we're honoring above all else, I can't implement systems or anything else. Most people come in, they're like, I want to implement these systems, and then I'm going to step away. But they have no culture. They have no leadership. They have nothing done. And they lose every single time.
Right. We're in a really interesting period now with AI, right? And you made a comment last night when we were sitting down with John Asseroff, that there's going to be 2 types of companies in 18 months. Those who embrace AI and those that are bankrupt.
100%. Yeah.
So tell us how, what you're doing to embrace AI and what you're going to help me do.
I love that. I got roped into that. Guess what I'm doing now? So there's a couple things when it comes to AI. I think John said it really well. AI is what fire was to humanity. And before I came in, and we talked about it last night with John, when the Industrial Revolution came in, bazillions of jobs were wiped out, bazillions of jobs were created. When the information age came in, and that's what I grew up with, a bazillion jobs were created, a bazillion jobs were... This is the same thing, just on a faster. Everything's just happening faster. So if you are a creative person, apologize to the people in the room, if you're a creative person and you produce music or videos or anything with art, I'm sorry. If you create content, I'm sorry. Sooner or later, we as podcasters, I'm sorry. It's over.
You know, he showed us a process to basically digitize your entire being, avatar, voice, and everything.
Everything.
And to literally within 15 minutes or less, 5 minutes, to create a podcast.
Yes. And then do it
out of a piece of written content, out of a single concept.
And you didn't write any of it.
And you didn't write any of it.
Right, because we sat down and we said, how do we create the Unbeatable Mind? Is what we did on the podcast. Right. And all of a sudden, it created everything. Created the podcast, created the workbooks, it created everything for you.
Created the course, created
absolutely
PDFs.
Like that. And within a couple minutes, we didn't even get to finish the question that we were talking about.
Yeah, and it'll post it all the different platforms.
Right, and it shows it based on what's the most viral. Right. I would have to pay tens of thousands of dollars to do that. It's going to speed all of that up. It's going to make most humans, for how we've operated, completely ineffective. But we've gone through this before. We had farmers out there. Well, we had the Industrial Revolution. Things changed. The minute you had food being stored in cans, it changed the world. It's just where people could live. So that's going to happen again. So when it comes to this, when it comes to AI, if you haven't fully embraced it, if you don't have someone on your team who does this full tilt, you will go out of business. And finding the other people. And
unless you're like a restaurant, but there will be AI processes and whatnot for those types of service businesses.
Absolutely. So like when New York raised their minimum wage, they went up to whatever, $15 an hour. McDonald's was like, no. They went into the process. And what they did with that is they said, we're going to do this. And they just put iPads. You just order right off an iPad. So you don't need the person at the front desk anymore. That was the game changer in that environment. We're not Democrats, we're not Republicans, we're not conservatives, we're not liberals. We obey the market. So when you come in, and my favorite example, because we've got tariffs going on right now, which I will leave that alone. But when you go in and
it's a hot orange potato.
It's a 6'3" baby. So when they did this during World War II, Coca-Cola did not give any soda pop or Coca to Germany because we were restricted. So they created Fanta. Well, Fanta is $8.3 billion. The market just figured it out. So whenever I see tariffs or things changing, I always hear the Fanta sound in the back of my head because they're just going to adapt. The market doesn't care.
So Fanta was basically just Coke for For Germans?
Yeah, so because they didn't have the stuff. And then they just made it themselves. So then Fanta was made because they restricted
the Germans
supplies.
made
The Germans made it.
They just
because Coca-Cola couldn't do it. So that was the
but they
pivot
didn't
there.
have the secret formula.
No, but they made
Can't be the
Fanta.
same.
Yeah, it can't be. It's horrible. Fanta's gross. Sorry, sponsors. Soda's crap. Drink water. So anyway, so with AI, you're going to have these massive changes. And if you
I've equated it to literacy.
Yeah.
Like if you, when the printing press came out, if you didn't learn to read, you thought, oh, that's not for me. You got left behind.
I would think it would be
It's
fire or
kind of
electricity, even that intense. You know, literacy, and I'm stealing that from John. That's not mine because I used to say literacy as well. But we talked about it yesterday when he showed us. It's fire.
Yeah.
It's going into combat with a knife versus an AR-15.
Nuclear weapon.
Absolutely, you lose just all day. You just lose. So
And it's coming fast. Like you see how fast from ChatGPT being first released to now we have agent AIs and then like hundreds, if not thousands, of AI tools being released like every day. Most of them be crap and fleshed out, and we're moving toward the AGI, which is basically the AI that programs itself.
Yes, and it's going to get there. We talked about it yesterday, where the IQ is.
It's already at 170. I thought it was 140, but it's already at 170,
which is higher than Einstein.
Yeah, higher than Einstein. And it's going to be well over 1,000, they said, in 18 months. An IQ of over 1,000.
Which is ridiculous. Yeah.
Think about that, guys.
We just become bald pink monkeys at that point. We will be
well, I'm thinking a couple different
things.
And
then AI will have, will be smarter than the entire human race.
Very quickly. Well, if it's already at 170, it's definitely smarter than most of Florida.
Right.
So I have to go back
Florida.
Florida.
Okay, so we talked about content creation, which is huge. But not everyone creates content, but there's also automating customer service, automating sales processes,
stock trading,
automating
medical. What they're doing with cancer breakthroughs is wild. What they'll be able to do. I'm related to someone who.
Like business processes.
Oh, business process, everything. There isn't a single thing you can do in business right now, other than face-to-face interactions, that aren't going to be replaced by AI.
So how do you find an AI savvy teammate who can, at least lead the charge? Where are they?
So
are they in high demand?
They're in very high demand, but the problem is what worked 3 months ago doesn't work now. So you want to find someone that is already inside a collective where they're being constantly trained in that environment versus I'm going to go out and I'm going to hire this guy out of school, this one guy who might have done programming, might have thing, he's out of date. And when I was a Microsoft certified trainer, we were teaching curriculum to get people to become, I was MCSEs. It took 6 months to get the books out. It was already out of date. We already rolled out new updates in the software, so it was completely out of date on what we were doing. We used to say for every 1 year we had 7 years in tech. I would probably put a 0 on that now. So every 1 year, it's 7 years. You're out of date. So if you've gone to school to study something, congratulations, you have a useless paper. If you've taken a Google class on AI, you lose.
Most traditional education is obsolete right now.
Yes. Except
for some of the trades, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, doctors and all of that. But education for me was, can you go to an environment for 4 years, or 4.5 like me, and deal with people you don't like to a goal that you don't really want to do and show up every single day? That's what school was. Yeah. And that's what jobs are.
Teaches discipline.
Yes.
I think the main reason it's so important now, especially as you guys are touching on this, is that people need to learn how to think. And it's very concerning to me when I hear, what you're saying about AI, and then we look at generations who don't ask questions, who don't, to just rely on technology, and that they're starting to eliminate humanities and arts and focus on just science and technology. And so that to me is like,
and I think that's a big mistake because AI is going to basically be smarter than anybody else when it comes to creating, creating the algorithms, creating the technologies that change the technologies.
Right. And then.
So you're just going to be the one that turns the machine on, and they don't even need to be turned on.
They're smart in a way. And then there's always that, like, do they have, the intelligence of the heart? Creativity,
insight, compassion, intuition.
Yeah.
Like that's what we teach, Kathy, you and I, in Unbeatable Mind. I think those are the most important skills for leaders.
Well, and then just back to schools, like schools might need to be recreated.
Have to be.
Like I've been thinking 100%. About that. I just had this conversation around teenagers and with parents that were concerned about their teenagers. And I was saying, well, our schools from from industrial age, it's like to train, to indoctrinate, to, and so now like we need to rethink education as a whole, especially as I hear you saying that, it just like got my mind even more on that educational tip,
Well, there's also, school taught us to regurgitate. I was
Yeah.
horrible in school. I
Versus
barely made it
think.
through. Right, versus think. And I would
Yeah.
be punished for thinking because I remember you used to have to sit there and say, show your work.
Yeah.
Or learn how to spell or memorize all of the capitals. As soon as the internet came out and Google came out, I remember sitting next to my father and I was like, look, I don't even know what the capitals are anymore. I've got Google. And now I don't have to spell anymore, which, ask my assistant, hi, Christine, I don't have to spell properly. I wrote my book in 9 days. And she goes, do you know that your has an R on it, right? I'm like, shut up. And she goes, and because has a cuz on it, right? I'm like, shut up. She goes, what is with the period? I don't have any grammar abilities, but I'm an author. I'm not a writer. So getting human beings to go back to what we're supposed to do, which is our brains are not meant to retain information. Our brains are developed to create solutions, and to your point, to keep us alive, to survive. That's what it's at. We're getting back to that. So it's going to change radically. AI, if you're at that, oh, I'm afraid of it or not afraid of it, you've lost that luxury. If you're not embracing it fully right now and training on it right now, go get a really nice bag and a cardboard thing so you can sit on the side of the road. It's going to be that bad.
Yeah.
Because people I know who are just, fundamental traders, they do high frequency trading. They're scared for their jobs because the computer's just doing it faster. They can think, even if they're not as good as you as a trader, they can process so quickly that they win.
Right.
It's changing everything.
It's going to be interesting.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
Fasten your seatbelts.
Yeah. Or go to Costco and get some Vaseline so it'll hurt less.
Yeah.
Either way, it's going to be wild.
And then you fuse AI with robotics, which is already happening.
Yes.
We're going to have little robots all running around.
Well, I have a hockey puck in my house that goes around and vacuums my house. I haven't vacuumed my house in 4 or 5 years. I don't need to. There's a little hockey puck that goes around and cleans it all the time. Every night at 6 o'clock in the morning, it goes around and it cleans my house. I'm not at home right now. It's having a blast cleaning my house. So I'll
I
go
haven't
home.
vacuumed my house in years either.
Yeah. Why would I do it?
Someone
I would
else
say
has.
this. Absolutely. That's a different conversation. Mine was cheaper. Mine was $300 and I was done. But now they have the one that's a steam mop thing. I'm like, that's coming next. Absolutely. So yeah, it's going to make life easier in some ways if you adapt. And we talked about this before. You adapt or die.
Yeah.
That's where we are. You either adapt or you die. It's that simple. You either have unbeatable practices and you go through with things that are proven step by step by step, or you get eaten alive.
Pretty fascinating, isn't it? We just don't really have a say in this, it seems like.
Not
Like I bring up the point about drones. Like there's zero part of me that wants drones flying all over my neighborhood delivering packages.
You don't vote anymore.
What the hell?
Yeah.
But it seems like they're going to do it anyways.
Well,
They don't ask us. They just
think about it like this. People are like, oh, I'm worried about, because people were freaking out about vaccines and they were putting chips in us and all of that. God bless theories. And they're like, I don't want to be tracked. I'm like, but you walk around with a phone with a GPS and it has a camera and a microphone. They're tracking you anyway. And they're like, oh, we don't have a vote on most of these things. My car, for example, they have, it's a smart vehicle, the one that my rental. It's a laptop screen, for God's sakes. It tells me everything I need. It tracks everything that I do. I don't have a vote on that anymore. No, you don't get a vote. This is where we live in. Deal with it.
deal with it.
Are you ready to revolutionize your hiring process? Don't search for employees. Match with Indeed. Indeed's driven by the search for better. And when it comes to hiring, Indeed is your ultimate solution. Why Indeed? Well, Indeed's the premier matching and hiring platform, boasting over 350 million global monthly visitors. Their advanced matching engine helps you find top quality candidates fast, eliminating the need for tedious searching. Streamline your hiring process with Indeed. Say goodbye to busy work. Indeed offers seamless scheduling, screening, and messaging features, allowing you to connect with candidates faster than ever before. An impressive 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites. We've got over 140 million qualifications and preferences analyzed daily, with a matching engine that continuously learns and improves, tailoring results to your specific needs. So join the ranks of more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that trust Indeed to hire greater talent quickly. In fact, during this short ad, approximately 23 hires were made on Indeed globally. There's an exciting opportunity for you. Get a $75 sponsored job credit to boost your job visibility. Simply visit Indeed.com/Divine to claim the special offer and support the Mark Divine Show. Remember, when it comes to hiring, don't search. Match instead with Indeed. Visit Indeed.com, INDEED.com/Divine, DIVINE, right now. Terms and conditions do apply. You need to hire? Then you need Indeed.
What keeps you awake at night?
Lots of sleep deprivation.
Besides your girlfriend or your wife. Are you married?
I'm not married. No, the girlfriend. What keeps me awake at night? Whenever I'm not honoring my truth. Because at the end of the day, if I stand in front of the mirror, I was like, did I do a little bit better than I did yesterday? And then I'll go through that thought process and spin out. So that'll keep me awake at night. As far as the scary stuff that keeps me awake at night.
You're supposed to go through that process before bed, by the way.
Yeah, I
call
know.
that the evening ritual.
I don't always do that. So I might need some help on that. Might need
I'll coach you.
Yeah, I might need some help on that, please. As far as I think the question you were asking, like, what is the scary stuff that keeps me awake at night? Birth rates. So in order to keep a species locked and loaded, you have to have a birth rate of at least 2.
2.1.
Yeah, 2.1, right. If you're below that, your species is dying. And for those playing at home, if you and your wife, you and your husband have a kid, your birth rate is 2.
What's the global average now?
Depends on where you are.
I meant like if you were to average everything out, because Africa's gotten pretty high birth rates.
Right. So,
but most of Europe, Russia, China, and the United States just dip below that too. But we're
so I think the United States is like 1.8.
Okay.
I think Russia, because this is the last generation for Russia, they're at 1.3.
Number 3.
Germany, Italy, they're in the 1.3 range. Because of the One Child Act that happened in China, they're at like 1.4 to 1.6 range. So they're all in terminal decline. And this has been going on for 60 years. Yeah. And people are like, well, how do we fix it? And I was like, well, 60 years ago, start banging each other. But we don't do that. Because after the Industrial Revolution, we realized that kids suck. Why would you have more of them? They're expensive. People don't want them. And then the millennials, which is the birth rate's wild because they've been through massive catastrophic issues. Because I'm Gen X and we just didn't want to deal with kids because we had to deal with the trauma of the boomers. So the millennials aren't having kids till later. They're doing everything about 10 to 15 years later. So we are as a...
Are you talking about...
Yeah.
I've always wondered about this. Because I hear the catastrophic talk about declining birth rates. Does it mean that the entire species will collapse, or does it mean that we'll just reduce the size of the population on the planet to something sustainable?
Yeah, I think it affects global trade.
Maybe Mother is supposed to have 3 billion instead of 9 billion people or something.
I think it's more economic that I worry about on that one. Because, for example, for years, and when you served, it was a big thing to go be in the sandbox and take care of the Middle East. Well, we get less than 3% or less than 4% of our energy from them anymore. If we wanted to do it right now, China has more vessels than our Navy does.
Yeah.
But none of them go more than 2,000 miles. They just can't do it. So they're useless to us. We have a bigger fleet. There are top 5 air forces.
They don't have the logistics supply chain.
Correct. Top 5 air forces in the world, 4 of them are ours. So I'm not worried about that. We have, our last 9 presidential elections, we've elected people who are more and more and more isolationist than we've ever had. We just don't care about the rest of the world anymore. So when we step out, we pull out
Obama's not an isolationist.
Oh, Obama barely liked talking to his own kids, let alone anything else. So Obama didn't like talking to anybody.
He was a globalist in my view.
Right. But if you look at our patterns of what we've done, we didn't try and get in bed and to push these things up.
We didn't have the money anymore.
We didn't have the money, and we don't have the people. If we try to invoke and keep the free trade lanes, which is what happened, we had the idea of you can trade anywhere at any time, and we will protect it. So
you read Peter Zion's work?
Yes, this is Peter Zion.
The end of the world.
Exactly where it is. Yes. Yeah. So everything I'm regurgitating, it's Peter Zion. Yeah. And he's 100% right. We are seeing the decoupling of the world.
Deglobalization,
decoupling. Yep. Yeah. And so we're going to have very clear divides. We're going to have Americas, which is North and South America, are going to unify because it's easy to transport. We have resources up in Canada. We have consumers in the United States. And we have people who work from us from there down. Yeah. Mexico is going to have the best 10 years that they're ever going to have. Russia is, go look at Peter Zion stuff. Europe is in a tailspin. It's collapsing. You've got cultural issues and birth rate issues. And, you've got Israel. I mean, I've got friends in the IDF. And
China's collapsing.
China's
collapsing.
They
have half its population by 2100.
Yes. And then the problem that we're going to have with food and water from climate change, you're going to lose 1 billion people in Africa. That's the stuff that keeps me awake because there's an expression in my community, we say never again. And it's the rest of the sentence.
You mean the Jewish community?
Yeah, in the Jewish community. And I'm not Jewish in any way, shape, or form, but I walk around with Schwartz and have with this nose. What are you going to do? When you go to that, the rest of that sentence is never again to us.
Yeah.
And the rest of the world is it's happening to them, be it by nature or anything else. And that's what really keeps me up more than anything else is it's going to get ugly.
Existential threats.
Yeah. And then sooner or later, China knows they can't beat us in a fight. Russia knows they can't beat us in a fight. So if there was some sort of really crazy thing, it would be somebody with a little vial of something walking into JFK, dropping it. It cracks. You got a 72-hour incubation period.
Small right across.
Yeah, I mean, it's not hard to shut down the United States if we wanted to. Get 20 people, give them rifles, tell them to drive randomly, and pull the trigger.
Spain, Portugal, and France were shut down yesterday, probably by a cyber attack.
So they called it a natural anomaly in the weather, which was fascinating because my friend who's German, I don't know if you remember me saying, she reached out to me 4 weeks ago and said her friend who is in Germany, because she's not, had just gotten notification to make sure that they had 3 days of food and water, batteries, and all that stuff. And I'm like, that has to be connected to what just happened.
Yeah.
So they knew it was happening.
Yeah. I mean, the whole energy grid thing is so interesting because that's a great example of how centralization always leads to some sort of collapse, whether it's governmental or power grid or whatever, food supply. And everything has been moving toward these massive centralization, centralized economy planning, centralized power grids, centralized food production. It's all got to go back to decentralization, localization.
I mean, if the United States, so right now, Europe is a little mad at us, which, okay. If they go
they're
on
mad
their
at
own,
Trump. They're not mad at us. I don't think they're mad at me.
Right. Well, they don't know. Who I am.
Until you go over there and then they'll look at you like you're Trump.
It's funny. I backpacked.
That's what happened to
color
me.
my hair dark.
Did you backpack last
So
time?
I backpacked during when W was in office, and I had to walk around and explain to Europeans that we were not a democracy, that we were a democratic republic, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I walked around all of Europe doing that. I'm sorry. Look, we're a democratic republic.
I did the Camino de Santiago, Trump's first stint in office, and I was not welcome in Europe as someone from the United States. It was, and I was like, exactly, I had to explain, like, hey, wait a second.
I'm from California.
I'm from California, which is not the rest of the
different ballgame. But so when you go into this, how long do you think Germany is going to want to sit there and pay for Portugal or Greece's debt?
Yeah.
Not long. So now we're going back to how they were before World War II.
We're balkanizing.
So now it's going to they're going to decouple. So there's a lot of decoupling going on. So if anything kept me awake, it's the unknown of what that's going to be. It's going to be wild.
And on top of that, you got AI accelerating everything and creating these even more massive wealth disparities.
Yes. That's going to get ugly.
May we live in interesting times.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
What's next for you? You wrap up.
Some sleep would be nice.
Sleep,
I missed that. Right?
You're in the
We're talking
World
about
War
how to get that sleep.
I meant in like business life.
So yeah, I think trying to help people out. So, you created a podcast, which, we're going to be on there with it. I created so it's a Proven podcast, which gives everybody
new
these
brand,
answers.
the Proven.
Yeah, we're going with the Proven podcast because I'm just not that egotistical to use Charles Schwartz show. We're going over to Proven, which shows people, hey, this is what works. I just get up the next step. I don't want you to climb Mount Everest. Here's the thing that works. Here's a whole community that I work with. Here's access to them. Enjoy them, work with them, have fun. If you like them, great. But instead of going through and, a joke that I normally don't say on camera is that, Jesus didn't walk on water. He knew where the rocks were. Right. That's where I found my success.
I actually think you walked on water.
Well, there you go. So I just know that there's success, and success leaves clues. I wanted someone when I was a kid, when I was a broke kid at 14, who's going to help me find those clues? Who can, I know they're out there. I know there's people making bazillions of dollars. How do I do that? So that's where I built this community for that. And outside of that, it's more passive income and building more assets and creating more distance, because when it does decouple and things get a little ugly and AI gets really goofy, people still need houses. It's one of the reasons I don't do cryptocurrency.
Yeah, real estate is probably the most. Yeah. Solid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Steady, stable.
Well, Melvin Simon,
crypto,
I just don't understand it.
Yeah.
And I'm a tech guy. I just don't understand it.
I like it, but I wouldn't put all my eggs in that basket for sure. I mean, I made a lot of money with Bitcoin, so I'm good, but I can't guarantee that won't get cracked by quantum 100%. Computing, or if the internet goes down for 6 months, guess what? Bitcoin goes down.
Well,
even though they're trying to put it in space and whatnot, but who's going to be able to transact with you?
Well, the United States is no longer the reserve. You're going to have an economic collapse here like you've never seen. It's like the people who walk around with gold. What are you doing? If we get to the point where we have to use gold, my lead's going to take your gold, and I'm going to do it at 300 yards.
Yeah. Knowledge.
Yeah.
Weapons. And, when I say knowledge, I mean like self-defense knowledge.
Yes.
Food, how to grow food, how to heal.
Yes.
Access to water.
Access to water.
Access to
water. That's the
water
one good thing about Florida. So at my house, I have a dehumidifier.
Yeah.
I just turn it on, and I'll just suck water straight out of the air. And we'll just fill up gallons of it because it's so humid.
You have to purify it.
It's a really big one that I don't think people think about.
Water's
is
gonna be catastrophic.
the importance of water.
Right.
I have one. I know you're wrapping up, but I have one more question, because you had said you would walk through the not enough part of the personas, and I'm interested in seeing you do that with Mark.
So to be able to access the different versions.
Yeah.
So it's really, really simple to do. So
if Mark's game.
So Mark, if you want
which not enough version do you want to be?
Well, the goal is to be able to tap into different versions on command, because that's the real secret of it. So if you kind of lean back, are you righty or lefty? Which one are you?
I was righty until I hit a tree at 40 miles
You
an
made
hour.
love to a tree at 40 miles an hour is what you did. You
I
absolute
still
madman.
consider myself righty, but I've learned to do a lot of
Can
things
you
with my
basically
left.
do this?
By the way, try wiping your butt with your left hand.
No, I'm good.
Really
Get a bidet for
much
God's
harder
sakes.
than it appears.
Get a bidet. Get a bidet. So can you basically do this with this hand though? Do you have elbow movement?
Oh, yeah, I can do that.
Okay, perfect. So where are you breathing? Where do you feel your breath right now?
In my lungs.
Okay. So, but where are you feeling? I'm virgin you. So do you feel high? You feel, where do you
No,
feel?
I always feel it down here in my belly.
Okay. So do me a favor, just put your hand on wherever that is. Do you remember the last time you went on a roller coaster maybe and you had that big high?
Yeah.
Where are you breathing now?
The roller coaster?
Yeah, where did that? So it went higher, right? Do you remember the moment that, for the missus, I won't say her name, that you were like, this is the woman I want. I am madly in love with her. She is, this is my home. This is my sanctuary. Do you remember that moment?
And my mind was somewhere else completely.
Okay, out of the bedroom. Back on the other stuff. But do you remember the first time you knew that you were madly in love? That you felt love?
Yeah.
Where are you now? Where are you breathing now?
Where am I breathing now?
Yeah, where are you breathing?
I don't know. Maybe right there.
So it changed. Do you remember the last time you ran into a business problem and you completely got screwed and just lost your ass?
Last week?
Awesome. Okay. Where are you breathing when that one?
That's fucking tense.
Right. So it changed.
Yeah. No,
Your physiology, and you know this already, has to change in order for you to gain access to those things. So if we went through the process of, do you ever have a moment where you don't feel like you're enough, when you can't do it, where does that version of you breathe? And you'll find it on command. And so do you remember when you were honor grad and you crushed it and you knew that you were the man? That's a different place of breathing. If I ask this version of you, based on that breathing, a question, it will give me a different answer than this version. You just have to go through a very simple breathing exercise. But understanding the breathing is just the gateway, you have to go through everything else.
Yeah.
There's a version of you that's not enough that dresses a certain way, combs his hair a certain way, wipes his ass a certain way, brushes his teeth a certain way, all of that. Versus the honor grad does it very differently. There's a version of me that if you were going to try and hurt the one person in the world that I love more than anything else, that version of me, I can't even speak now, it reset it because I thought about it. My breathing changes and I'll get more aggressive with that. Being able to tap
saw these
in.
little horns come on it.
Yeah, well, that's why we were yarmulkes. But those are the ideas of being able to access it on command and understand that this answer from the lowest is as important as the other ones. And going in and out of those will get you to where you need to go, but you have to give space to it. When the minute you have judgment, the minute you have emotion to it, you lose. You have to get to the point where you're indifferent to whatever comes. That's called the witness, and that's the who changes everything.
Yeah.
If you can get to that one and it says, no, I'm not enough, I screwed up, I chose bad business decisions, I chose bad partners, I've had really bad sex, whatever that is, just hold space for it. And then I want to go kill everyone and destroy the world, just hold space for it. And then you get to the point where what is the most effective way to doing that? So gaining access to the not enough, it all starts with breathing. Gaining access to the version of you that can change everything, it starts with breathing. But when we're sitting down and we're showing AI and we're going through all that, a lot of us going to, I don't know this, I can't do this, I'm going to freak out. That's not going to get you there. It's just not. Just like when you guys have stuff going through buds, because we're close to Coronado and I could not be a SEAL because that shit's cold. You can sit there and you can watch the guys, even when you do SEAL fit, you'll know the guys who are going to pull through it. You can just look at them like, he ain't got it.
Yeah.
And once you get them to pivot,
You can tell by their body language and their breathing.
100%.
I agree with that.
And then you can pivot them. Once they breathe differently, they will show up differently. So most of us get stuck with that. And it's kind of like Tarzan, where they're going through vine by vine and they'll hold on to what was and grab a new vine and they'll never let go. It stops momentum. You've got to let go. You've got to just be free into that movement. So I think that was the question you were asking.
Yeah.
So
That's good.
Thank
so,
you.
okay,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I was circling back. That's helpful to understand the process of persona and how you move into action versus stagnation.
I will say personas are not states and they're not archetypes. There are versions of me that, I could be in my warrior version.
They're more complex than that.
Right.
I agree
And,
with that.
personas
Their
have
personality profile within a broader kind of suite of personality profiles.
and none of them are real.
And the higher self is like the one that can switch between them.
He's the one who takes the information
Interesting.
and then decides, okay, like when you had, how many people are in a unit? If it's a SEAL team, is it 6 people normally?
In a
Like
operating unit,
Yeah, like in a team.
14 or so.
Okay. What's the smallest group of SEAls where they deploy? Is it 6? Is it 8?
It's classified.
1.
Okay. So, so let's say there was 4. If you came in and you're the commander of this 4-man unit and you guys are doing skydiving And then you jump out, and then you land in the water, and you got to go for a swim, and then you do a shore incursion, and then you do a breach, which means you got to open a door without knocking. So I can't believe I just told you that. But for those people at home,
I was right there with you. Like I was on another.
what is that? How does it work? So if you're the commander of that unit and you're not the best scuba diver, don't plan the scuba diving portion of it. If you're not the best skydiver, don't plan that part. Outsource your weaknesses, double down on your strengths. But we don't do that in our lives. We say, okay, I'm in pain, I'm suffering, I'm not enough. I'm going to keep using this version to try and get me there, which is moronic. It's never going to work. It's the equivalent of, we met your dogs this morning. Which one was the howling one?
Well, Mahina was my dog.
Okay.
And howling one was Catherine's dog.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was Starlight.
So Starlight.
She's the vocal one.
She's vocal. If I gave Starlight a bowl of water and it filled it up to the very top, she would make a mess. Right? This is what they do. That's what dogs do. If I went to Starlight and said, here's a broom and a mop, what's going to happen?
She's going to eat it.
Right. Because she's a dog. She's not going to clean it up. But in our lives, we do the same thing. This one of us broke it. I'm going to use this one to fix it. It's moronic. It's absolutely combat ineffective. You have to pivot out. And until you do that, you'll just be stuck in the same patterns over and over and over, no matter what you get. This is why I would go to events with Tony Robbins or Eckhart Tolle or even your stuff. When I went there, I was like, it's not working. I have the tactics, I have the skills, I have the what, the how, and the why. I have it all. It's not working because I haven't pivoted the who. Once I pivoted the who, radical change. That's it.
Ooh, yeah.
That works, yeah. We'll just rewrite that instead of H, it'll be W. Who, yeah. So.
Charles, people want to, from this conversation, you're going to have people knocking your door down.
Gotcha. Go hang out with Mark.
Come to me first.
Go to Mark first. If people are looking for me, I am Charles Schwartz on Instagram is the best way to do it for now. If they want to track down the Proven podcast, they can track that. We're building that. We're trying to catch up. Our community is chomping at the bit. I'm sorry, I'm not going faster.
Have you launched the brand yet or not?
So we're in the process of doing that. Probably by the time this comes out, it'll be out. If not, I am Charles Schwartz is the best way to my community. I'm sorry, I'm trying to catch up, but I have other things like a life that I'm trying to have. We will have all that operational and open for everybody. But yeah, the best is go to I am Charles Schwartz on Instagram. If you want to copy the book, we give it away for free. I've been giving it away for free since 2019. As soon as we hit WSJ, I just give it away. It's like, have fun. So
awesome. Right. Thanks for being here, man.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate
you.
Absolutely, you as well.
Looking forward to doing some more stuff with you.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Have you ever wondered what it takes to become an unbeatable leader? I'm Mark Devine, and my journey from the relentless discipline of SEAL training to coaching elite leaders has shown me that true mastery comes from within. And in 2025, I'm offering an exclusive opportunity, 3 VIP coaching spots for a 6-month transformational experience where I work with top-tier leaders like you. My coaching has empowered leaders at organizations such as Google, Nike, Slack, Boeing, and even Harvard to build the discipline of a SEAL, to master what I call the 5 mountains and the 5 plateaus, and create a life of unparalleled success and fulfillment. This isn't just another program. It's a chance to evolve into the kind of leader who commands respect, drives extraordinary results, and inspires change. So if you're ready to break through your current limits and elevate your leadership, visit markdevine.com/coaching. Complete your application and let's set up a call to explore your potential. Your transformation awaits. Embrace the challenge and become truly unbeatable. If you're ready to dominate your year, head to markdevine.com/coaching to learn more and fill in your application today.